Hi, my name's Sue and this is Sue Maree P and I like baking with spelt flour. So welcome to my channel. I had a request from one of my viewers to explain how to bake with spelt flour and the difference between white spelt and whole grain or wholemeal spelt flour. So moving to Sweden, I'm really fortunate that they sell spelt flour here and it's called Dinkel, and it's called Dinkel in many countries in Europe. And spelt flour I've been baking with since I was in Australia, so well over 15 years. And I first started buying white spelt flour because it's really similar to white flour or plain flour as it's called in Australia, or all-purpose flour. So it's sifted flour, it's got no grain in it, and it's super easy to swap out your favourite recipes, like your favourite vanilla cake or your favourite banana bread or chocolate cake, and just do 1-to-1. So if you've got 150 grams of plain flour that's specified, you can put 150 grams of spelt flour. I'll just put a disclaimer that most recipes work out fine, but you might need to just test it first. And I love baking with spelt flour because it's an ancient grain. It's been being grown in many countries since the Bible times, so back many years ago, and it's what's called an ancient grain. So because it's not genetically modified like wheat is, it's gentler on the stomach. And I first started eating it because I had a wheat intolerance. I wasn't gluten intolerant, but I was trying to do gluten-free and it was just getting a bit tricky to bake that way. So I discovered spelt flour and started baking with that and found, as long as I didn't overdo it, it was kinder on my tummy. And if you stick around to the end, I'll share some of my top 3 favourite recipes in both white spelt and whole grain spelt flour. Moving on to whole grain spelt flour. In Sweden, it's called fullkornsmjöl. I probably didn't say that right. So that's whole grain. So it looks darker in colour. It's not as white, and it's got grainy bits in it. If you want to bake with this and you can't get white spelt, you could probably sift out some of the grainy bits, but usually it will create a denser cake. So I save this for doing, like healthier style banana breads or carrot cakes, muffins, and things like that. Now, when it comes to bread making can be quite tricky. I've been experimenting with spelt bread making for about 5 years now. I only use processed yeast or instant or fast yeast. I haven't quite developed the sourdough technique yet. And I often do, if I want like a fluffy white bread, which is what my husband likes, I use white spelt flour. And then occasionally I can sneak in a little bit of whole grain flour, so I might do like 70% white, 30% whole grain. And I've also got a few healthier bread loaves, 100% whole grain. Now you do get a denser loaf, and it's not that light fluffy loaf, and you do need to watch your hydration. A little tip when you're baking with spelt flour for bread, you don't need to mix the dough or knead the dough for as long. The fibres in spelt flour aren't as long and stretchy as regular flour, and you may need a little bit more moisture because sometimes the spelt flour can soak up the moisture, especially whole grain. And another little baking tip I do is I always add a little ramekin of water. So I just pop some tap water into a ramekin and place it in the base of my oven, and then my bread always comes out soft and fluffy, and it just adds a little bit more moisture to your bread. And another thing I do is I often add olive oil. Olive oil kind of counteracts some of the dryness in the bread, so it adds a little bit of moisture. So my top 3, you've stuck around to the end. So my top 3 white spelt flour recipes, and I'll put the links up above. So coming in at number 1 are my white spelt buns, which are perfect for burger buns, dinner rolls, anything like that. They're really light and fluffy, and I've served them to friends and they haven't even been able to tell that they're made with spelt flour. Number 2 is my banana bread, one of my very original recipes, and I'll pop the link up above as well. And number 3 is my pizza dough. We love pizza, we try and have it every week, and we love homemade pizza dough, and I've been experimenting with spelt flour for quite a number of years now, and I often do it with just whole white all white spelt flour. Occasionally I'll sneak in some whole grain when I want to be a little bit healthier. And moving on to the whole grain recipes, the number one whole grain recipe is my fluffy spelt pancakes, which I make with whole grain flour. Just depending on what I've got in the cupboard, I'll try and do it with whole grain, which is my preferred way. Otherwise I'll just use white, but they're really popular. I've got a bread recipe, just like a really nice healthy loaf bread with whole grain spelt flour. You can throw some seeds in there. This week I experimented and added cinnamon to my seeded loaf and a little bit of cardamom, and that was delicious. And the other one is my how to make whole grain spelt bread rolls, which they're not as light and fluffy as the white, so they're healthier and they're more dense, but they're still a really lovely roll. So just to wrap up, if you would like to write a comment below of any questions that you've got about how to bake with spelt flour, if you've got any concerns or problems that you face, just pop a comment below. I love getting your comments, and I'm always experimenting with new recipes. So please feel free to pop a comment below if you'd like to see a particular recipe that's your favorite that you haven't been able to eat because you can't eat wheat flour anymore. I'll pop a few other ideas for some of my newer spelt recipes up above. And thanks for watching. If you're new here today, I hope you've enjoyed this information about how to bake with spelt flour. Please don't forget to subscribe, stick around and watch some other spelt videos. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.